Hi, good morning and welcome to another class on banking English. And this is Deepa Shankar. I would be teaching you your banking syllabus in English. So let's go ahead with the class today. As usual, we start the class with a book recommendation. As I've already told you, good reading is the basis for language skills. Okay, and that is the single most important what do you call, language building exercise that you do throughout the years, to, get to an expert level. All right. So today we will be discussing something that we've all read as kids, but unfortunately we read that as a non-detailed text. Unfortunately, we studied that with the express intention of getting good marks and a great academic score. That's all there is. So any guesses on the book? Hi Vishaka, good morning by the way. The classes are now in the evening. No. The classes are right now, the forenoon, as we've always done. Okay. So today we will be discussing The Count of Monte Cristo. By Alexander Dumas. Okay, so Dumas has written quite a few books. Two of my favorites and probably the only ones that we've all read, The Count of Monte Cristo, and the other one, The Three Musketeers. Okay, so The Count of Monte Cristo is a very gripping story of revenge. Okay, it's set in historical times, a couple of centuries earlier, and it's all about a man who has been wronged. Okay, so he actually gets hold of a fortune after having spent some time in prison, wrongfully imprisoned of course, and then he comes back to exact revenge on all the people who actually wronged him. Okay, so it's a very gripping read, as I said, a classic, and no wonder that it's a non-detailed text in most school curriculums. So please catch hold of it today and start reading. See, the only issue that I have with these books is that Alexander Dumas was French. Okay, so a lot is lost when translated. Okay, so you need to figure that there might be a lot lost in translation when you read these texts. Okay, so that is the book suggestion for today, The Count of Monte Cristo. Now, I also have another suggestion. If you have read a book that you feel is good, you can probably come up and comment in the forum here about it, and we'll discuss that as well. Okay, all right. So now we go to the recap of our previous class. Okay, so we did subject-verb agreement. Okay, now subject-verb agreement, we did quite a few examples, if I remember right, and it's very important in your spot the error kind of questions. Okay, then we did pronoun antecedent agreement and pronoun reference error. Okay, so a quick recap on what the subject-verb agreement is. It's nothing but a plural subject has to have a verb in plural form. Okay, so there might be confusion in assigning whether the subject takes a plural form or not. Okay, so there are several cases that we discussed in detail. Then there is the pronoun antecedent agreement. Okay, so that would be if you have a noun, how does it take the pronoun form? All right, then pronoun reference error. So unless you've actually introduced the noun, you cannot have the pronoun. Okay, so that is about the previous class. Next we move on to the question that most students got wrong from the previous CPP. Okay, now let's look at this. I believe that we did an exercise, an example question right here in class. Okay, so I'm actually surprised that people got this wrong. Analysts state that the recent growth in the number of electric cars in Indian cities are likely to increase. Now, remember that the number, when you have the number, that probably denotes 13, 14, 1 million, 1,000. So it's a specific number. Okay. Then when you say a number, that is plural, while the number refers to the number. So this is singular. So now that we have come to the conclusion that the number of electric cars is a singular subject, right? The verb associated should be in singular form. So I eliminate all options that have are. This is gone. This is also gone. So A, B, and E are eliminated in one go. Then look at this. The number of electric cars in Indian cities is perfect. I might not look further. Nevertheless, to eliminate the last option also, look at this. The numbers of electric cars. No, when you say numbers, numbers of what and what comes into the picture. Number of electric cars is perfect. So this is wrong. The numbers is wrong. Now, if you say numbers, then this has to be are. Correct? And you talk of number of electric cars. That's it. Not numbers of electric cars. Okay? So C is the right answer. Any doubts here, Vishaka? All right. So we move on to this class. What would we be doing in this class? We will be looking at active and passive voice, direct and indirect speech. Okay, so it's a rehash of whatever we've seen in primary and middle school. Okay, now voice, a given sentence that you choose to say can be in active or passive. Okay, now look at this. The subject and verb relationship is straightforward in active voice. And then the subject is a doer. So look at this. Phelps created a record. This is the subject. Created is the verb. Okay. So I start with the subject. My subject is the doer. Who created the record? Phelps created the record. Okay. Now, that is what we mean when we say subject and verb agreement is straightforward. The subject is a doer. When you put this in passive voice, the subject is not a doer. Okay. The subject is, here in this case, a record was created. Now, this by Phelps is optional. Okay, so this is the same sentence presented in passive voice. Okay, so the active voice is Phelps created a record. Passive voice, a record was created by Phelps. Any trouble here? Next, we come to see the active voice is what comes to us very naturally. Okay, now very rarely do we use passive voice. Now, pun intended here, because I said very rarely do we use the passive voice. Okay, is that active or passive? Vishaka, any answers? Rarely do we use passive voice. I'll write it down for you. Now, rarely do we use the passive voice. Any answers? Now put this in the very normal form. I know that the rarely in the start of the sentence, that is what is probably bothering you. We use the, okay, now look at it this way, you can rebuild the sentence like this. We use the passive voice rarely. Okay, it is the same form. I've just rejuggled the words, right? So this is very much inactive, although quite a few people get confused because they believe that passive voice, that is of course the focus, okay, the we and use, the main verb, the main subject, that is probably taking a back seat in this construction. Okay. Now let's look at the examples here. Now first and foremost, when do we use passive voice? In some cases, the focus is not on the doer, it's on the job that is done. Okay. For example, when you say a record was created, Phelps is not the important part. The record was created, that is what you want to focus on. So when you want to focus on the job, okay, that you make that the subject. Any problem there? Doubts, if any? So the passive voice is used when the focus is on something else, something other than the doer. Okay. Now look at this, the chair is broken. I don't know who broke it. I come back and I find that the chair is broken. Okay. Now I have no idea who did the job, but I know that the chair is broken and I need to do something about it. I'm more focused on the broken chair. I have no idea who the doer is. I do not know. Okay. So in that case, we use the passive voice. The chair is broken. Okay. So whenever the doer takes a second seat, a secondary position, we use the passive voice. Look at this, the class has been cancelled. Okay. Here again, class being cancelled, that is what is important. By blah blah blah, not important. This shall not be forgotten. Okay. So forgotten by whom? Not of any importance. So you understand that it is not mandatory to have the doer at all in the passive voice. You cannot create a sentence without the doer in the active voice form. Okay. Now that castle was built in 1781. Who built it? No idea. The car was invented about 100 years ago. Okay. So the car, that is the focus. I have no idea who the person who built the first car is. Okay. So that is not important here. I was told that Shelley moved to a different country. Okay. So I was told by whom? No idea. Now this is a clearly confusing sentence because the other clause here, Shelley moved to a different country, that is in active voice. So there are students who might think that this is in active voice, but remember that I was told, that's the main clause, correct? And that's in passive. She was elected to the city council. Elected by whom? Okay, no, that's not given. She was elected to the city council. That is the fact of the matter. That is what I'm interested in. Now, it is recommended that the process be shortened. I cannot say enough about the subjunctive these days. Okay, so if you have a subjunctive, in this case it's recommended, we go back, revisit the list of subjunctives that we've already seen. Demand, command, mandate. Okay, so recommended, that also joins the list. Recommended that the process be. Now what is the verb that follows the subjunctive here? It's be. The root form of be is be, right? Be shortened. Now we move to the previous class's contest question. Okay, so I did give you a hint that after phobias we would be looking at manias, correct? Okay, so no one got it right though. We look at the question now. Match the manias with their corresponding elements. Okay, what is a mania? It's an obsession. Okay, now you're obsessed with something. In this case, kleptomania. Kleptomania is, this obsession with stealing things. Now, these aren't, people who suffer from kleptomania aren't exactly thieves. It's just that they have this crazy, habit of taking things. It could be something as unimportant as pens, pencils, chalk pieces, markers, okay? Anything, any inanimate object, it can start with that. So, kleptomania is actually a psychiatric condition. Kleptomania is the obsession with stealing. Okay, when I call you a kleptomaniac, it means that you have this obsession with stealing small things. Okay. Then there is bibliomania. Biblio is the root word for books. It has to do with books and reading. Okay, so a bibliophile is someone who loves books. Okay, we've also seen this. Phil is to do with love, like, friendship. Okay, so a bibliophile is someone who loves reading, loves books. Bibliomania is being maniacal, obsessed with books. Then there is plutomania. Plutomania is craze for money. Okay, now Pluto. When we look at this word Pluto, it can be attached to quite a few things. One is mania, and then we've also seen that cracy means rule. Okay, so when you put Pluto and cracy together, you get plutocracy, which means rule by the rich. Now, because we are here, let's also look at a few other government forms. Okay, so we have already seen democracy, correct? Okay, then there is theocracy. Then there is gerontocracy. We just discussed plutocracy. Okay, now what is democracy? Demo is to do with people. What is a democracy? It's a government for the people, of the people, by the people, correct? Okay, so people rule, that is democracy. You vote, you elect your representative. Okay, so that's a democracy. Theocracy. Theo is the root word for God. Okay, so a theocracy is something that is governed by gods. Gerontocracy. Geronto is to do with old people. So gerontocracy is a bunch of silver-haired people ruling over you. Plutocracy we just saw. Okay, so this is about the several forms of governments. So here the right answer is AF, BD and CE. That is AF, BD, CE. D is your right answer. So now we move on to this class contest question. Good luck. hope that was easy enough for you. Okay, so because the last two classes we haven't had a good run with our contest questions, I've given you some really easy questions this time around. I hope to have some answers. So Shanta, okay, good participation. Others, please chip in. We will of course be discussing this contest question in the next class. Okay, all right, so let's move on to our active and passive voice. Edwina wrote a letter to Jawahar. Okay, now Edwina is the writer. Subject, verb. Okay, then a letter was written to Jawahar by Edwina. Okay, so here the doer is actually Edwina. She is optional. Even if I cut the sentence here, place a period here, a letter was written to Jawahar, it's right as such. Okay, passive voice. The government built a new capital. A new capital was built by the government. Okay, so even here, remember that in the passive voice, the doer need not be mentioned at all. Your sentence is absolutely valid even without the doer. I recommend that you apply for this position. It is recommended that you apply for the position. Subjunctive again. Next, we move on to direct and indirect speech. Okay. Now, the direct speech is what comes to us naturally. Hi, Gurunath. Hello, good morning. It's been a long time. Anyhow, so direct speech is what comes to us naturally. Okay. The English language has two ways to narrate something. Okay. One is the direct speech. This is what comes to us naturally. Then there is the indirect speech. We can also call this a reported speech. Okay. Now, let's look at examples now. When you speak in direct speech, the message of the speaker is conveyed in his actual words, verbatim. Okay. So, if I tell you un, goes, tres, you take the entire, you take it verbatim and, take it to someone else and say, you know what, Deepa said this. Okay. So, that is you're reporting something. If you use my own words, that is direct speech. If you change it, let's see how, okay, it becomes indirect speech. Now, indirect speech is when the message of the speaker is conveyed or reported in our own words. Okay, Gurunath says, hi, good morning, ma'am. Good morning, Gurunath. Out of station due to weekend off. Hey, great. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed your weekend. Now, direct speech, Ethan said, I am very busy now. Indirect would be Ethan said that he was very busy then. Now, what have we changed here? The punctuation, yes. I have removed these. Then Ethan said that. Okay, so that becomes the word, the conjunction that kind of introduces this clause. Okay, he was very busy. I becomes he. He here refers to Ethan, of course. Was, I am busy now, was. Okay, because it's over, you change the tense. Very busy, then. Now, then. So the entire tense structure is changed. Okay. Now look at what all has changed. As I said, punctuation, conjunction, I, okay, the pronoun is changed. Then am is changed to was, present tense is changed to past. Then the adverb now is changed to then. Okay. Now let's look at the converting rules. He said, comma, excuse me again. He said, comma, and then you use the right punctuation, unwell. He said that he was unwell. Okay, so sorry about that. I seem to have picked an allergy from somewhere. Okay, so am becomes was. There is a definite change in tense with the verb form. Then he says or will say, I am unwell. Okay, so this, in this case, it is present tense. Okay, they said we cannot live without water. In this case, they said that we cannot live without water. So in some, you clearly see that in this case there is no change in the verb form, while these two have a clear-cut change in verb form. Then conversion rules for present tense. I am happy. So when you report it, so it's quite logical, right? I say I'm happy. When you, the moment I am done saying this, it's past. I have already said it. I have finished it. Okay. So when you say, you know what, Deepa's class today, she was saying she was happy. You don't say she is happy, she was happy. Okay. So present tense, changing it to reported speech, you should always take care to change the tense. I am reading a book, he explained. In that case, it would be, he explained that he was reading a book. Okay, so we all wonder what book he was reading. She said he has finished his food. She said that he had finished his food. Because here, has finished, okay, then that becomes perfect with had. Past perfect. I have been to Gujarat. That again becomes past perfect. He had been to Gujarat. He told me that he had been to Gujarat. Okay, so the tense change is something that is very important, that we need to keep our eyes peeled for. Most difficult part of my learning is this, Gurunath. Okay, what do you mean? Active and passive voice or direct and indirect speech? Get back to me on that and we'll discuss this. We'll make it a point to make it easy for you. Right, Gurunath? Yeah? Alright. So now we deal with past and future tense. Now remember, when it's simple past here, he said Ira arrived on Monday. You change it to past perfect. He said that Ira had arrived on Monday. We were living in Goa. They had been living in Goa. Okay. So remember that when it, draw a timeline. Okay. So this is present. Okay. And past. When someone says something happened in the past and you report it, the reporting takes place at a later date, correct? So this in itself is the past from this point. When you have two incidents in the past, then you need to use the double past, the had structure. Perfect. Okay. So had been living in Goa. I will be in, okay, now look at this. I will be in Kolkata tomorrow. So you're talking about okay, he said, so this is over. I will be in Kolkata tomorrow. This is in future tense, correct? That becomes, he said that he would be in Kolkata the next week. Okay, so will changes to would. She said, I will be using the car next Friday. She would be using the car next Friday. So will becomes would. Then changes in modal verbs. So modal verbs we've already seen, they indicate some form of permission, obligation, request and probability. Okay, so he said I can swim. Can becomes could in reported speech. He said that he could swim. Okay, then he said I may buy a house. What is the difference between may and might, by the way? May means probable. I may come, I may not come. Okay. Now might is very less probable. When you say you know what, it's rainy, I might not go to office today. Okay, so you can take it from me that there is more probability of me not going to office today when I use the word might. Okay, then, but when you change direct to indirect, look at this. He said that he might buy a house. This is something that quite a few are not aware of, so please make a note of this. Whatever is may in direct speech becomes might in indirect speech. You cannot say he said that he may buy a house, he might buy a house. Okay, he said I must work hard, he said that he had to work hard. You can't say he said that he must work hard. Okay, and interrogative typically has to do with questions, correct? So Shanta, yes, might has lesser probability. Very good, very good. Okay, then he said to me, what are you doing? Asked. Okay, so interrogative is all about questions. Asked me what I was doing. So there is a clear-cut tense change, and you also take the question mark out. Gurunath, direct and indirect speech, ma'am. Okay, so let's make it a point to make you let go of all the difficulty. Okay, yes. He said, will you come for the meeting? So here, probability indicator, whether. He asked them whether they would come for the meeting. Where do you live? Asked the girl. The girl enquired where I lived. So you see that asked, whether, enquired. Okay, so you add all of that in the reported speech structure. Change of pronouns, this of course is pretty simple. She said, I am in 9th class, for which you say, you give the appropriate pronoun. She says that she was in 9th class. He says to them, you have completed your job. Okay, he tells them they have completed their job. So the appropriate pronoun has to be used. He says she is in 10th class. Okay, so she of course is, okay, that's okay, it doesn't change. So we come to the summary of today's class, but because we have some time left, let's discuss more on vocabulary. Okay, so today we will take words. Okay, let's do something interesting. We will be doing some words that have been loaned to English from Indian languages. Okay, so do you know of any such words? If yes, please go ahead. So, now these are words that have directly been borrowed from Indian languages to English. So typically, when you hear the mantra to success is blah 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 blah. Work hard, stay disciplined, stay motivated. Okay, so this word is something that means mantra to us. When the Englishman uses it in English, it means that it's a motivational thing. Okay, the mantra to fitness is working consistently. Okay, then juggernaut. What is the history of the word juggernaut? Do you know that this comes from Jagannath? So there was some Englishman, in the colonial times who came to Jagannath, and the Rath Yatra was happening, okay, and there was a huge commotion, and then the Rath started moving, okay, and it was an unstoppable force. All right, so when he took the story back, The word juggernaut, of course, he could not pronounce Jagannath, right? He used juggernaut. Okay, so the juggernaut today means an unstoppable force. Okay, then avatar. Okay, of course, we call it avatar. Avatar, reincarnation. They even made a movie out of it. Yes. Shampoo is actually a Hindi word, if I remember right. I don't speak Hindi, by the way, so you can let me know if I'm wrong. So shampoo and police are again from Hindi. Okay. So do you know of any such words? If yes, you can let me know. Okay. So that's it for vocabulary today. Summary of the class, of course, we've seen active voice and passive voice. We've seen direct and indirect speech. Okay. Now, thanks for joining us. Passport members, please go ahead and do your CPP. The CPP, for people who do not know what it is about, it's a set of 10 questions that we feel are suitable for today's lessons. Okay. So, go ahead, do your CPP, share it with others. Go ahead and let's know where you are, where you stand in your CPP. Good luck. See you then. Bye until next class.